Okay, so hello and welcome to Grasswalker's top 10 cards from Innistrad. The old Innistrad, not the new one, because somebody already did a video for the new one, but never mind. Okay, so in the number one spot, yeah, we're going to start at number one because you shouldn't be surprised by the first three or so cards, and then the next three probably won't surprise you, and then the four at the end, they're the interesting ones because they're the ones that you run out of time for, and you have to make some concessions because there weren't really 10 cards that were that great for Pauper in the first in. We lead off with Dorothea Secrets. It literally couldn't be a list without him, and to put him anywhere else than number one, number two, number three, and a number four, just as him, would be ridiculous. He's extremely undercosted. He's one of the most evasive clocks you'll find around. He will kill an opponent in 7 turns after you play him on turn 1 if they can't do anything about it or they try to do something about it and you cast a bunch of counter spells. And the fact that he's played a bunch in Modern, Legacy and even Vintage as a 4 as one of the main threats in decks should tell you all you need to know about Dorothea Secrets and how good he is. And we get to play him in a format that doesn't have that many great answers for him. The second card on the list is actually almost as good as Dorothea Secrets, but mostly because of you putting it in your sideboard. Ancient Grudge is a fantastic 2-for-1, and it's really good in the metagame of Pauper where lots of people like to play affinity decks because of all the artifact lands, where this becomes Stone Rain on steroids. And it's also pretty good against Tron when they try to put down a load of artifacts, artifact creatures, all that kind of stuff. Your only downside to Ancient Grudge is the fact it puts you in both red and green, or just red if you just want to kill the first artifact and pretend that you have the green to scare your opponent whilst it's in the graveyard. It does have some graveyard synergy, which I probably should have put on here. I might add that in. If I add that in, be proud of me. If I don't, tell me in the comments that I'm stupid. Now, our third card on the list is Curse the Bloody Tome. Now, this is Sphinx's tutelage's brother who lost an arm in the war and then came back wounded, but we respect him because he's common, whereas Sphinx's tutelage is an uncommon, so we don't actually get a choice in the matter. This is an evasive clock, as weird as that sounds, because there's not many things that interact with enchantments, and it puts your opponent on the equivalent of a 25-turn clock, assuming that they've drawn 3 cards from turns on turn 3 and 7 cards from an opening hand. So they have 25 turns to win the game, or they become milled out and they lose. Now, it also sort of acts as removal, because if your plan is to control the board state for 25 turns anyway, all these cards that you're milling technically disappear from their deck, and if they do manage to kill the enchantment, they still die from mill eventually, and you now don't have to answer, say, 20 cards in the deck. It doesn't generate your card advantage in the removal sense, but it generates you, I don't have to deal with that card that's now in your graveyard in the advantage. On the other hand, it's absolutely abysmal versus aggro, where it achieves nothing and affects the board not at all. Now, our fourth card on the list is Victim of Night, because it's actually really cheap removal at instant speed with a very minor downside that'll only come up every once in a while and make you look really stupid to all your friends. It does heavily limit you into black, but it doesn't heavily limit you that far into black. You could run this in 2 colour, but I wouldn't recommend running it in 4 colour, which a bunch of Pauper decks suddenly are. In 5th place is one of my personal favourites, but because it isn't played that much, I can't put it anywhere further than 5th on the list. But Think Twice was amazing during its standard period, and it's a 2-for-1 card as it draws you 2 cards over the course of its lifetime, but it gives you a bunch of options and choice according to when you want to draw those cards and at what times you want to commit your mana into drawing those cards. And as well as that, it has fantastic graveyard synergy, because if you start milling yourself or your opponent starts milling you with the Curse of the Bloody Tome, you get some value out of it by drawing a card with the second half of the thinking. The 6th card on my list is Doomed Traveller, because he actually sees a bunch of play in Modern. As well as that, he's extremely difficult to remove, especially in Pauper, where most people kill things with either kill spells or burn spells. He does get wrecked by counter spells, but ideally you're dropping him on turn 1 and there's no counter spells that interact with that apart from Force Spike if you go in second. He has some fantastic synergy with equipments like Bone Splitter Axe, because both halves can hold it and both halves get equal benefit, except the second half gets a bit more benefit, so it's not equal benefit at all, because it flies and has evasion. Although oftentimes you will draw this card on turn 3, 4 or 5 when you want to be doing something and it will feel incredibly underwhelming. The 7th card on my list isn't so much powerful now, but I expect it to be powerful in the future if we get some more decent common burn spells, because it fits the 1 for 3 narrative that you need from a burn spell, except it can only hit the face. But as a benefit to only hitting the face, it also gives you flashback that you can hit the face again. If you have a playset of these in your deck, and you both cast and flashback them, your opponent is probably dead. But likewise, you're probably also dead because you wasted all your mana on bumping the knights. My 8th card on the list is Avacyn's Pilgrim, because it's extremely undercosted for an accelerant. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that generates a mana. There's a bunch of these at common level, but this guy has a downside in the fact he generates a colour that he isn't made by, like he generates white when he costs green. But I think that's an advantage in a green-white deck, where you've played a forest turn 1, you play him, and then you can, on turn 2, play a second forest, and then play something that costs 1 green-white. If green-white maybe became a bit better of a colour combination in Pauper, I can imagine this guy sees a bunch of play all of a sudden, and his price will spike to 27 cents. Overshadowed by cards like Ethereal Armour and Rancor, I really have a soft spot for Spectral Flight. Again, I played during the Innistrad Standard, where this was an absolute playmaker alongside Avacyn's Pilgrim in Bant Hexproof, and the idea is that you just give something +2/2 and evasion for the cost of 2 mana, so it's like playing a 2/2 with evasion, except you get the instantaneous damage, and your opponent probably can't answer it because your card that you've put it on has Hexproof and / or Shroud. Probably not both though, because I don't think any cards have both. And this is it, drumroll please. Number 10 in my list is Ambush Viper. It's instant speed, unexpected, cheap removal that doubles as a threat. This card has actually done fantastic work for me as a one-of in green decks, because firstly, nobody expects a green deck to be interacting with you in the combat phase when you declare an attack outside of maybe Fog and a few other cheap tricks. And the second part is, once you play this and you kill a threat, say a Mere Enforcer or something big that's got a bunch of equipment, or something that's got a load of auras in a hexproof deck, you will fuck up their mind. They will not be able to read you for combat tricks. They will not be able to read your bluffs. They will be scared to swing into 2 open forests and cards in your hand, which is absolutely ridiculous for just playing it as a one-off. The cost that you incur for playing this card is nothing for the value that it gives you in destroying your opponent's mind. However, you do want to watch out, because when you flash him out, he doesn't immediately kill something. He might get killed off by a burn spell or a removal spell of their own, which does hurt. It does ruin the surprise. But for the most part, when you play this card as a one-of, you will surprise the shit out of your opponent, if sometimes when it matters the most, sometimes when it matters the least. And sometimes you can get some incredibly valuable trades from this, and then in games 2 and 3, even if you don't draw him, your opponent will always be thinking. It's the Force Spike effect, but in snake form. But anyway, that's my personal list of the top 10 Innistrad commons from the first Innistrad, not the new one, like I said before. Tell me what you thought of them, tell me what cards you would change, mix around, what positions you would change, and hopefully my voice didn't give out halfway through this. I've been having some serious problems with it, but thank you guys for watching this video, if like or dislike as you see fit, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!